Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to Experience the Big Apple from home. Today, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about some really wonderful resources in Harlem that everybody can use to learn more about the Black experience here in the United States. The Schomburg Center is a branch of the New York Public Library, and it was the very first branch of the New York Public Library to be dedicated entirely to Black literature. It is named for a man named Arturo Schomburg. When Arturo Schomburg was a kid, he asked his teachers how come they weren't learning about any Black figures in their class. And the teacher looked at him and said, because Black people don't have any history, heroes, or accomplishments. Naturally, Arturo Schomburg wanted to prove him wrong and dedicated his life to doing so. He collected thousands of works of literature from Black voices, and he donated that collection to the 135th Street branch of the New York Public Library. Today, the Schomburg Center has what many people would consider to be the most important collection of Afrocentric artifacts, works of art, and literature. They also present lots of community programs. They have guest speakers. There is a theater in the space. They have online resources that you can access 24/7 from anywhere in the world. There is a big auditorium called the Langston Hughes Auditorium. Just outside of that auditorium, there is this beautiful site-specific work of art. The technical term for this type of art is called a cosmogram. And this cosmogram, it's inspired by the Langston Hughes poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. Underneath this cosmogram are buried the ashes of Langston Hughes, who was a huge fan of the Schomburg Center. When most people think about theater in New York City, quite naturally, they think about Broadway and off-Broadway. But Harlem has a really vibrant theater scene, and this theater scene is dedicated to promoting the voices of Black playwrights and the works of Black directors, designers, actors, and everything in between. If you get a chance, I strongly encourage you to come up to Harlem, see the classical theater of Harlem, see the National Black Theater, and we also have dance companies up here in Harlem. By seeing these works, you will be telling producers all over the world, whether they are Broadway producers, off-Broadway producers, national tour producers, regional theater producers, that these are the voices that we want to hear, and these are the works that we want to see. You will also get the really unique New York experience of seeing the very first production of many of these works of theater. So I strongly encourage you to come up to Harlem and see theater. When I give Harlem tours, I usually start out by asking my guests, true or false, the Apollo Theater was always a place where Black audiences could come and enjoy their favorite Black performers. Most everybody says that that is true. However, it is false. Before 1934, the Apollo Theater was a burlesque theater and only white audience members were allowed to attend. In 1934, it transitioned from a burlesque theater to a variety show theater, and changing the marketing to the changing demographics of the neighborhood of Harlem. For the first time ever, Black audience members were able to go and watch their favorite performers. Since 1934, the Apollo has hosted so many really famous performers, and they also created a program called Amateur Night at the Apollo. This was kind of like the very first American Idol. Now, the legend is that one of these very first amateur nights at the Apollo, there was a girl who was supposed to perform, she was supposed to dance. The dance team that danced right before her was so good and in these really fancy costumes, and she got really, really intimidated. So she said, I'm not going to dance, I'm gonna go out and sing. Her voice was so good, she ended up winning the entire competition, and that, ladies and gentlemen, was Ella Fitzgerald. So that's how Ella Fitzgerald got her start. Since then, performers ranging from Billie Holiday to Lena Horne to Sammy Davis Jr. to Josephine Baker to James Brown to John Coltrane to the Isley Brothers to Jimi Hendrix to B.B. King to Aretha Franklin to Bob Marley to Diana Ross to the Jackson 5 have performed at the Apollo. Outside of the Apollo, there is an Apollo Walk of Fame where you can see many of these names listed and more. If you are ever lucky enough to be in Harlem, I strongly encourage you to take a backstage tour of the Apollo. It has such a rich history and will also give you really valuable insight to the history of Harlem. If you walk east on 125th Street from the Apollo, you're going to get to a giant statue of a very dashing man walking up a slanted platform. This man is Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Now, I'm ashamed to admit that I actually lived in New York City for many years before learning who Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was, and it's a name that I wish was taught much more in schools. In 1932, there was a department store on 125th Street, the heart of Harlem, called Bloomstein's. 75% of Bloomstein's customers were Black. However, they refused to hire Black employees as anything other than porters or elevator operators. Adam Clayton Powell thought that this was wrong, so he led a protest where he encouraged the residents of Harlem to not shop at Bloomstein's. He told the Black residents of Harlem, buy where you can work, and you can't work at Bloomstein's. So Bloomstein's lost 75% of their clientele. This encouraged Bloomstein's and pressured Bloomstein's into changing their policy so that they hired Black employees. This was 1932, 31 years before Martin Luther King gave the I Have a Dream speech. You could feel the civil rights movement starting in Harlem, led by Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Bloomstein's department store is gone, but that statue of Adam Clayton Powell stands strong, and 7th Avenue in Harlem was renamed Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard. I strongly encourage you to support the small, local Black-owned businesses. If you go to my blog at experiencetheBigApple.com, I do have an entry called Discover Harlem, where I list many of these businesses. Some of my favorite restaurants in Harlem are Sylvia's, she's the queen of soul food. The Red Rooster, that's Marcus Samuelson's restaurant, and he has kind of new innovative twists on classic soul food. And Charles Pan Fried Chicken. This chicken is so good that my boyfriend actually wept when he ate it. Full-grown man weeping on the sofa because he had never tasted chicken that tasted as good as Charles Pan Fried Chicken. There's also great places for dessert, such as Patisserie des Ambassades and the Harlem Chocolate Factory, which has these wonderful chocolate truffles, and all of the flavors are inspired by New York City and Harlem history. There's also really great nightlife in Harlem. Bill's Place is an authentic speakeasy feel where you will hear some of the best jazz in the world. Paris Blues is another wonderful jazz club, as is Minton's and the Cecil Steakhouse. So if you're looking for great live music, Harlem is the place to go. There's also great shopping, especially when it comes to hats. You want to check out Hats by Bun and the Flame Keepers Hat Club. All of these businesses are Black owned, they're all local, they're all unique to Harlem, and they're all experiences that you cannot get anyplace else in the world. I strongly encourage you to come and visit Harlem. I strongly encourage you to take a tour of Harlem while you are here. There is so much history, there are so many wonderful Harlemites to learn about that will help all of us learn about the Black experience in the United States.